progress.
Hi all, this is our final project called JSIP Hotline, a local solution for sextortion. And members of my team include Jorge, Ian, and myself. So we as a team would target to cover on the project specifics, mainly in terms of the what, the how, and the why. So I would be covering and highlighting the aspect of what this project is all about and its high level overview. Next, we have Jorge throwing some light on the specifics like how this project can be implemented and the details on the project structure. And finally, we would have Ian covering the details on why this project is needed and some good research on the outcomes. So let's understand what is the meaning of the term sextortion. Sextortion is a form of blackmail in which a perpetrator uses sexual information or images obtained from a victim, often through hacking or manipulation on the social media platforms. And that threatens to disclose the information and images in order to extort additional material or even sexual favors from the victim. So the term sextortion is commonly associated with act of revenge porn, which involves the unlawful dissemination of images of another person, usually a former sexual partner, into public medium. However, the term more specifically involves an element of extortion or corrupt persuasion for the purpose of prompting some form of additional sexual activity rather than simply projecting revenge or ill will towards the victim. So moving on, let's understand how prevalent is extortion. Extorting sexual activity through the use of modern technology on social media platforms is relatively a new cyber phenomenon, but is also quite prevalent on a global scale. And in most of the cases, in the most comprehensive research study on the subject to date, the Brookings Institution concluded that sextortion is surprisingly common and brutal. In fact, with 1 in 20 women reporting having experienced non-consensual pornography, this is quite shocking and a sad thing to know. And a 2017 survey revealed that sextortion is more prevalent than actually reported, with 1 in 3 victims failing to report the crime because of shame and embarrassment. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, 78% of the sextortion victims are females, with an average age of the victims being just 15 years old. The perpetrators carry out their threats in about 45% of sextortion cases. In fact, the FBI proclaims that sextortion is one of the fastest growing crimes against children. Okay, let's go through the trends in the cases for the past 10 years and try to understand the numbers. According to the FBI's recent report on Internet Crime Complaint Center, known as the I3, there was a shocking 242% increase in sextortion crimes from just the years 2017 to 2018. And if you can see, this increase basically includes a variety of online schemes like sexual remarks, mainly in the form of photo scraping, blackmailing, and threatening. Coming to the category of the cases, as you can see on the pie chart, almost 46% of the cases involves minors of age 17 years or younger. In fact, I reached out to the website offering help to sexually exploited children called the Cyber Tip Line to get a good knowledge of the number of child victims involved. And they replied saying that they have surpassed 100 million reports And more than 20 million just came in last year that relates to sexual exploitation and harassment of children. This was quite shocking to know, as this is just the reported numbers, and you can imagine how many cases go unreported. So that kind of brings us to our main premise of introducing a fourth domain to the existing infrastructure of the California state, that is police, medical, fire, and now the cyber. So as we sort of discussed previously in our proposal, we came up with an idea of public service helpline that provides detailed technical help and emotional help to victims of sextortion. So yeah, before we take a look on the structure of the project, I want to highlight some of the research work I did mainly to answer the question: what are some of the existing hotlines already in place? And how is our project aligning to this? And how is our initiative different from the existing ones? There are a few investigation agencies and hotlines operating to report and deal sextortion cases that already exist in California. Like as you can see the screen, see on the screen, Digital Investigation Initiative, Cyber Blackmail 911, Cyber Civil Rights Portal, and Cyber Tip Line, just to name a few. I dialed up all these platforms and tried to reach out to, dig deep and carry out the necessary due diligence, circling around the existing structure, their operational model, and also on the number of cases they handle on a daily basis. And also, last point was to finally get to know how they dealt with these sort of cases. So you can see the survey questions of what kind of questions I asked them, and yeah, so that will give you a good idea on that. So the response was 3 out of the 4 of them did not get back to me. And what was surprising was some of these helplines were not reachable at all. I also observed a common pattern that most of these agencies offered free initial consultation. However, if the victim was looking to proceed further, there would be a whopping cost for the service itself. So we wanted to kind of bridge this gap in our initiative and make our project a potential hybrid one, where the funds come in from both state as well as private organization based on the severity and the priority of the cases we receive. Because at the end of the day, we all know cybersecurity talent and expertise is hot right now, and it could be expensive. In addition to this, we also thought of a volunteer program, which gives opportunity for willing experts to do some public service and to have an option of donation to a good social cause, such as donate to our project. In fact, more specifics on the project funding would be covered by Jorge later in this session. And another thing that I happened to notice is that most of this helplines only operated during during the fixed times. So the following question that arises is that, what if a victim wants help during 2 a.m. In the night? I feel it's essential to have 24/7 supportive service, especially with emergency cases involving sextortion. And we wanted to bridge this gap as well, and kind of have a long-term goal to provide a 24/7 service to support victims who are really in need. So coming to our proposed project, our hotline team would mainly consist of experienced cybersecurity specialists whose main intention would be to provide valuable guidance and technical help to people who feel victimized, and um, in addition to this, offer a digital investigation service to people in need. Okay, so this slide shows some of the services we plan to offer and address, like defense against extortion, crisis management and emotional support, preventing exposure, and finally identifying and analyzing digital footprints to gather evidence. So our main aim would be to build a specialized system that would help us get the digital footprints to track down the IP addresses, the cell phone numbers, email addresses, social media accounts, um, and even dig deep into specific devices that might I know that attackers might have been used or might be using while carrying out this extortion crimes. So the main intention of this system would be to help identify criminals and document harassment so as to help the victims build strong legal cases of extortion. We also plan to bridge the emotional and sort of provide legal guidance to victims in addition to ensuring absolute privacy. So before we move on, I want to summarize that these are the type of cases we would be handling at a high level and drawing the lines as far as the boundaries are concerned. Yeah. So moving on, the next question that arises is that is extortion considered a crime? So let's try to understand some of the legalities and statistics here. Okay. So as you can see on the screen, there are like 4 pointers. I'm going to cover each one of them and let's dig deep there. So although nearly every state has laws criminalizing the non-consensual dissemination of intimate images under something called sexting laws, approximately only a dozen of states have prosecuted revenge porn or sextortion cases using various reasons like the other category, the non-specific laws such as gender sextortion, harassment, bribery, and even child pornography. Within the United States, Arkansas and Utah are the first states to enact specific sextortion laws. These laws mostly refer to sexual extortion. And the most recent state to enact sextortion statute is the state of Alabama, where its sexual extortion statute became effective on September 1st, 2019. This is really a good sign that many other states are also considering similar provisions in their respective criminal codes that we're going to see in the next slide. Another question that arises here is that, are there any civil remedies to address this issue? Answer to that would be, um, you will get the answer after having a deep statistics, after we go to the deep statistics here. So 80% of the revenge porn images originate as selfies. And because of that, the copyright law is sometimes used to force the removal of images from the publications. And additionally, if you see in the year of 2019, the Uniform Law Commission approved that the Uniform Civil Remedies for Unauthorized Disclosure of Intimate Images Act, which defines the prohibited conduct and provides for civil remedies. Colorado and Nebraska adopted the act in 2019, with Delaware introducing a bill for consideration as well. So, these are the current civil remedies that are available. Next up, I want to highlight some of the pitfalls that exist in the current legislation. Well, nearly every state has sexting laws. However, as I mentioned before, only a dozen of states have prosecuted revenge porn or sextortion cases using specific laws such as general sextortion, harassment, bribery, and child pornography. But one big question, or no, one big concern is that currently there is no specific sextortion law at the federal level. The narrow legislation such as Stopping Harmful Image Exploitation and Limiting Distribution Act of 2019, popularly also known as the SHIELD Act, has been introduced, but the federal laws primarily rely on the non-specific statute that cover the online aspects of the crime. According to the Brookings Institution study, there are several federal statutes that have been used to prosecute sextortion activity, and particularly those involving child victims. And the only alternative that exists currently is the HR 2896, that is also known as, we just we just take a look, reviewed that particular law called the SHIELD Act. Yeah, so what we see here is, this is not sufficient. We still have a long way to go when it comes to passing game-changing federal laws relating to sextortion and cyber harassment. And there could be a variety of reasons for this, because I can say that one of the main reason is the mindset and the hesitation of the congressmen and people in power to cast support to such laws, as they themselves most of the times engage in such activities of sexual exploitation and are apprehensive of the consequences of passing such strong laws relating to sextortion. Moving on. I want to highlight the difference between state and the federal sextortion laws, which are there. Yeah, so there is a primary difference between the state and the federal laws applicable to sextortion that highlights a significant federal deficiency. So federal laws targeting the sexual elements of sextortion activity treat the age of the victim as an element of the crime rather than an aggravating factor. So thus, most of the federal laws used to prosecute sextortion activity that does not involve minor victim, are federal laws that are not specifically focused on sexual exploitation of the victim. This results in significant sentencing disparities based on the status of the victim. So, when we see all this, raising awareness on the existing laws and defining the boundaries of the crime to the general public plays a very vital role. We completely believe in this aspect and would work towards it as a part of our project. We also would like, we would also like to work towards raising awareness and educate public on cyberbullying and sextortion. In addition to just, posting the information about sextortion, like the applicable laws, the resources for victims, blog posts, infographics on our website. The JSIP board members and staff would specifically work to give presentations about sextortion at the university, at the universities and the conferences. We would also like to participate in media interactions as far as possible, and even contribute to documentaries online, highlighting on the legislative laws of sextortion and promotion of amendments to it. In addition to this, we would also like to contribute by highlighting opinions and editorial pages towards the initiative as a whole to spread awareness in this domain to the general public. Next, to answer the question of how this proposal aligns with our class material, during the course readings, we would clearly decipher the outcry for public interest technologies. And in module 4 specifically, we read the sextortion was very surprisingly common, and brutal. And cyber harassment, just next to identity theft, is sort of the epitome of protecting our digital citizens. In fact, majority of the modules in our course highlight the importance of public good and public service innovations. Our project directly maps to this idea and helps bridge this gap between the physical crimes and digital crimes on everyday users. So yes, this pretty much covers the specifics behind the what, the outline, and the legal implications. Next up, we would have Jorge throwing some lights on specifics like how this project can be implemented and its structure in detail.
Thanks, Sanjana, for explaining the what of the project, and it was an amazing. Well, so next up we have let me just share my screen quickly. Yep. Okay. So next up, we have just a sec. Okay, cool. So I'll be talking about the project deliverables. Let me just resizing this. Yeah. So um so we designed this deliverable infrastructure um which is divided into basic components. The first one is the hotline organization, and also we designed the hotline infrastructure. So by talking about infrastructure, we're talking about a more technical components, and by talking about the organization, we are talking about how the different positions inside the hotline is going to work properly. From the hotline agent, the call center, to the top authority, which will be state or city authorities. Also, I'm going to cover the how of the project, how the project was well, it's going to be funded, how the project is going to become a reality. And we'll start with the first part, which is the deliverable infrastructure. So we designed the deliverable infrastructure with a technical point of view. So by having the cybersecurity hotline service, which will be providing service for sextortion and cyber harassment victims, we will have first we'll have trained hotline agents and as well as cybersecurity professionals. The cybersecurity professionals I will explain further on where they come from. Also, we will have an inbound call center, and also we are going to use voice over IP service implementation. This is pretty usual in standard call centers, and we can also have a virtual call center since we can have qualified candidates, employees on different time zones if this escalates enough. Since firstly it will operate on a local basis, like in San Francisco and cities around it. And well, this will be beneficial if the project begins to grow in an organic way. But by operating at the local level, it will require just the basic standard considered equipment, and as well as not much considered agents, and well, it will require also as well fewer cybersecurity professionals. So this infrastructure um, will enable us to operate on a daily basis, since one of the long-term goals is to have a 24/7 call center infrastructure. And next up, I will be explaining the deliverable infrastructure diagram. As you can see, the diagram is divided to five main components, being the product itself, which is the cybersecurity hotline, by having as well communications, funding, external stakeholders, and as well as having internal stakeholders. So I will begin with the internal stakeholders, which will include the call center agent, the team leaders and supervisors, quality analysts, and as well as departments specially made for policy and regulations. So the call center agents um, are one of the most important components on the hotline, since they will be attending victims on a daily basis, and they're going to be crucial to the victim support. These agents are going to be well trained in the in a like since it will be a critical hotline, they will be trained properly to attend service victims. Then we have the team leaders and supervisors. These people are going to be in charge of a team of agents, and they're going to make like uh, the daily game plan. They're going to supervise the agents. They're going to give feedback and coaching to the agents. Um, and well, next up we have the quality analysts. The quality analysts are just there to make sure that the quality metrics from the call center are being met. This is to ensure that the call center is operating in an efficient way. And well, the policy and regulations department, this was covered earlier by my teammate Sanjana. They're going to be in charge of the legal aspects of the operations. So they're going to take care about how we treat uh, minor victims. Um, they also are going to advise uh, the the call center agents on how to properly communicate with underage victims, and align well with child protection acts such as COPA. And they are just there for us to be giving uh for us giving a very good service uh in accordance with the law, since in this case would be in accordance with the state law of California. I will explain this further on. Then we have the external stakeholders. This include both the customers, which is the end customer, which are the victims, which will be calling the hotline. Quality insurance coaches. Coaches are going to be in charge of being supervising the quality analysts. Also, we have the prospects and clients for outsourcing, since if this escalates big enough, we can make sure that we can have a healthy income of call center agents. Next up, we have the funding. I will explain the funding further on. So the funding can be state, private sector, volunteer program. I will give full details on the couple next slides about this. Then we have the CAMS, short for communications. These are the tools that the call center agents, as well as the cybersecurity experts, also as the supervisors, are going to use to communicate between themselves. This can be like Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Slack, Trello. This is for organizing inside the organization. And next and finally, we have the product itself, which is the cybersecurity hotline. So this have four main components to operate. This is for like, from a technical level. We have the voice over IP protocol, the Global Protect VPN, voice logging and customer relationship management, or CRM. These are tools that are used by the inbound call centers worldwide and are very popular right now. So this can This will be useful for ensuring that the agents are in a safe environment as well, technically speaking, of course. And next up, we have my research question, which I have something to first talk about, which is the how. How this project is going to come to reality, and it's a very important question. One of the most important questions or aspects we extracted from the comments from uh, the midterm evaluation was that where's funding coming from, guys? So we we think truly, and we came up with three alternatives for funding this project. The first one, and this is going to be the ideal way of funding the project, is by the state. So the state of California will ideally be the primary investor since this project is operating at first on a local level. We want to make sure that the state of California sponsors this project. So this can bring several benefits, like like having law enforcement work closely with us. Those, if that is the case, um, we can hope to fill that gap between the victim of the sextortion or cyber harassment cases and law enforcement. So by having a service such as this project being that gap and providing this service and connecting victims to law enforcement, we can prosecute and caught attackers on a very fast and efficient way. Okay, so next up, I'm going to talk about private sector. Private sector investors will be seeked, but also will be welcomed. These private investors, they can have their own company, like on the valley or like a nearby city like Oakland, and they can bring uh, their own resources from their companies, like for example, cybersecurity experts to aid us in the cybersecurity professionals area, or they can bring like their own resources, like infrastructure itself, like on the technical side, and this can help us to fund the project and have like a solid foundation for the project. And well, the last but not least is the volunteer programs. These like speaking from a realistic point of view, this is the most viable funding option. And by having this type of programs, we can let graduate level students as well as professionals, for example, cybersecurity professionals, to have the opportunity to work at this project. So, um, so of course, the volunteer program is going to have a screening process where the volunteers are uh, are asked to come to an interview. They're going to be evaluated from a technical and also from a psychological point of view, just to make sure they're well prepared to manage these extortion cases and cyber harassment as well, since these topics are pretty hard and they're very crude usually. So we just want to make sure that the volunteer program recruiting process it's well designed, just to ensure that the agents that are recruited or the cybersecurity professionals uh, they are at their best, speaking from a psychological point of view, to tackle these situations. And well, earlier on, I was speaking about the hotline organization, and this slide specifically is going to talk about how the organization is going to be speaking from a like a on a position point of view. So if the organization is ideally funded by the state, uh, we'll have like the standard consider organization with just one exception. That exception being that we'll have cybersecurity experts tending cases which get out of control. The cybersecurity experts are there, but they will be not the ones that take the call. They will be the ones that take the case. If the case gets too invasive for the victim, or if it gets too uh, technical, like if it's like very technical in nature. So at the very bottom line, we have the hotline agents. Uh, these are the people that are going to be taking the calls on a daily basis, speaking with the victims, trying to like build the case. And if the case gets like out of hand, um, they are going to call the cybersecurity experts. So the cybersecurity experts can be either from the volunteer program or also from private sector as well. And this team of people are going to tackle the, the technical complex cases or cases where the victim it's too invaded by the attacker, like from on privacy level. And next up, we're having the agent managers. These people are going to be in charge of a group of hotline agents, and also they're going to efficiently allocate cybersecurity experts. The agent managers have to have a keen sense in distinguishing which cases are getting out of hand before they get out of control. So they can allocate in an efficient way the cybersecurity experts to help the hotline agents tackle a difficult situation in an efficient way. And if the project is ideally funded by the state, well, at the very top we're having the state and city authorities. So they will be the local law enforcement, and by working closely with the cybersecurity hotline, uh, we can we can escalate a case to law enforcement real quickly, and a case can be filed at law enforcement, and an investigation could be put put forward. So there's also a demo. We posted a video, separate YouTube video. It's going to be as well included on our assignment upload for you to watch. It's a conversation between a cybersecurity hotline agent and a sextortion victim. So feel free to watch that demo. Next up, we have motivations. The motivations, it's the main question we ask is what's the need for this project? Okay, so as of right now, there are not enough extortion or cyber harassment aid tools available for civilians. What I'm talking about. Um, this is basically that if the extortion victim it's being attacked by by a hacker, this victim doesn't have really a safe place to go to. Um, we did some research, and the projects, like the ongoing projects we found, were either abandoned or left out. Some of the pages led us to blank pages, to the typical like not found page errors. So the tools are not there, even though they once were. So this is becoming a real problem for victims. And also, there's an increasing number of cases due to poor cybersecurity measures from users. So, unfortunately, in search of social approval, teenagers are setting their profiles to public, thus making themselves targets. And this is making the work easier for attackers. They don't have to crack down passwords or so. Just like they can like study their victim and begin attacking. And this has to be tackled like like as of now. And well, currently, well, as I mentioned before, the Holland service is being offered to address this problematic. And well, here are some statistics. So we found that 78% of the reports had female minors involved, while 15% involved male minors, and the remaining 8%, the child's, well, the minor's age, not gender, could not be determined, and the age range was from 8 to 17 years old. So minor sextortion, it's a very serious and real thing that has to be addressed. It's 1 in 3 children had a self-harm or suicide attempt because of their sextortion experience. So this is some really crude stuff to go through, but if children are attempting to self-harm themselves or even attempt suicide, this problematic has to be addressed right now, and so this is the motivation for this project to make it possible just to help the victims. And well, we have a before and after scenario. So let's go with the before first. So before the cybersecurity hotline, we have a cyber harassed or sextorted individual that has no immediate aid available to help control and prevent further damage. So we have, like the typical internet user, not very tech savvy, and it's been attacked and harassed by an attacker from an unknown location. So this person begins to feel isolated since it is what the attacker wants the victim to feel, and the attackers want to make their victims feel helpless. And if they seek help, there will be consequences. So that is before. And after the cybersecurity hotline is implemented, well, with using our service, an affected individual will be able to seek help in both in a fast and efficient manner while preventing further damage to be done by the attacker. So if a victim comes to us and tells us like I have this problem, I have like this problem been going on for a few weeks, we can help the individual really fast. We can delegate that case to a cybersecurity professional, and they can feel safe in this environment. And well, I will pass on next to Ian.
Hello, this is Ian here, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So, um, thank you, Jorge and Sanjana, for breaking down the what and the how of our project. And so, what role I'm going to play here is bring to the table my why, right? So the research into the why this project should be brought to life. And we hope that this is something that we can continue on throughout the Mike's program, working as a team. So, but before I dive into the why, I'd like to present some research on sextortion. Now, Jorge and Sanjana have already provided some great statistics and a little bit of background, but again, I think it's important to really to drive to drive it home here. So now the following may be disturbing for some. So if you are viewing this and you don't want to hear some of these stories, viewer discretion is advised. Please drop in about 20 minutes or so. So, in the context of our project, we are focused on sextortion over the internet or being cyber harassed. And this is often done by getting access to a victim's webcam, phone camera, but I believe it is important to talk about sextortion as a whole and some research behind it. Picture this. A Peruvian mother is given a choice by a family court judge: have sex with him or not have custody of her son. A woman struggling for survival in cyclone devastated Mozambique is asked for bribes in exchange for food. She has no money, so, like many of her neighbors, has to have sex for bags of rice. 3 male asylum seekers fear that they will be deported if they don't let a Norwegian governor sexually exploit them. And this goes on for several years. A struggling student in a United States school is propositioned sexually by her teacher to improve her grades. Now, these are all very real cases, and this is happening whether we want to face the reality or not. And All of these people were sexually exploited by people in a position of power, and an abuse of trust known as sexual extortion or sextortion. So, um, who is affected, right? Well, it happens when people are coerced into paying a bribe with sexual acts rather than money. Sexual extortion is a common but largely invisible form of corruption. Until recently, it was never discussed or recognized as a distinct phenomenon by anti-corruption experts and policymakers, as well as their counterparts working against gender-based violence. Long lacking a name, sextortion wasn't a priority, and few research projects, strategies, and laws were developed to address it. And more importantly, barriers to reporting sextortion further contributed to keeping it invisible, which is why we're addressing this in our project, right? It's one of those barriers is to report these crimes. But it's not just, in the United States, it's everywhere. Like I mentioned earlier, it occurs everywhere in the world, affecting both children and adults, and both vulnerable individuals and established professionals. While women are disproportionately targeted, men, transgender, and gender nonconforming people are also affected. It can happen to anyone, especially those who are weakest in the power chain. So, what does the evidence say? Due to the invisible nature of sextortion, researchers have failed to ask those affected the right questions to properly understand this offense. Statistical systems lack the appropriate categories to register the few cases that go to court, and many complaints have been poorly handled and failed to achieve justice. According to the Global Corruption Barometer, the survey of citizens' experiences of corruption shows how common and widespread sextortion is. In Latin America, the Caribbean, the Middle East, and North Africa, 1 in 5 people have experienced or know someone who has experienced sexual extortion when accessing government services such as health care or education. In Zimbabwe, a 2019 survey found that 57% of the women reported that they had needed to offer sexual favors in exchange for jobs, medical care, and even when seeking placements at schools for their children. The FBI said in September that Americans lost more than $8 million to sextortion scams in the first 7 months of this year, following a massive uptick in activity from criminal groups. Interestingly, the statistics behind that from the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center that Sanjana mentioned earlier said that nearly half of extortion victims this year were in the 20 to 39 age group. Victims over 60 years comprised the third largest reporting age group, while victims under the age of 20 reported the fewest number of complaints, the FBI said. So channels of support for victims. A lot more research is needed on sextortion, but anecdotal evidence suggests that those affected can suffer serious, sometimes life-changing consequences. These include dropping out of school, pregnancy, leaving a well-paid job, and enduring abuse with physical and psychological effects. Many people who are harmed by sextortion don't report it because social stigma and cultural taboos make them scared of being shamed, excluded, or even attacked. They risk being re-victimized, incurring financial costs, and sometimes being prosecuted as a bribe giver. Importantly, many are put off reporting because of the danger of retaliation. If I report my supervisor for sextorting me, will he get me fired? Right? That's a question that these victims are asking themselves. So those that try to report it often fail to do so because safe, confidential, and gender-sensitive reporting services are hard to find or non-existent. It is rare that the services are available connect sextortion victims with vital physical and psychological support, as well as advice about the legal risk and potential costs of reporting this crime. Victims and survivors also find it hard to get support because many justice systems and legal frameworks are poorly equipped for prosecuting sextortion. Despite the harmful consequences, many anti corruption frameworks do not explicitly criminalize coerced sexual acts as forms of bribery, abuse of authority, or corrupt wrongdoing. Even when anti bribery laws could be interpreted to include these acts, this rarely happens due to long held perceptions, including among justice officials, of corruption as a financial crime. Finally, what is more is it is hard to prosecute sextortion under gender-based violence frameworks because of the difficulty of finding evidence and some laws not recognizing non-physical forms of coercion. So reports of sexual extortion often fall between the cracks of legal systems, leaving victims, survivors, without support and justice, and sometimes further harmed. So how can we look ahead, right? What are some of the what does the legal frameworks behind this look like? Well, in order to enable adequate prosecution of sextortion and get justice for those affected, all governments should develop a legal definition and framework for sextortion. Existing legal frameworks have too many gaps and leave some forms of sexual extortion unaddressed. Governments must implement legal training programs to ensure that judges and prosecutors are aware of sextortion and how to prosecute it. Sextortion also needs to be integrated into both anti corruption and gender based violence policies, programs, and regulations to ensure greater cooperation. More needs to be done to encourage victims to come forward, speak up, and seek support. Governments should launch public campaigns to raise awareness about sextortion and what people can do when affected by it. They must also provide safe, confidential, and gender sensitive reporting mechanisms that give victims access to appropriate support resources, such as physical and psychological health services and legal advice. Of key importance, governments should protect those who report cases of sextortion against retaliation and ensure that they are not prosecuted as bribe givers. There's much more to be done to gather data on and understand sextortion. Judiciaries must reform their statistic systems to address the lack of data about sextortion cases. At the same time, researchers should gather disaggregated data on sextortion through corruption surveys and other data gathering tools. By asking specific questions in the right format and using appropriate categories to organize the information. Further research is needed on how sextortion manifests, what legal framework is the most effective, and what works in addressing sextortion and providing redress to victims. There are many people whose rights are being abused behind a wall of silence who need and deserve reforms, protection, and justice. A 2018 survey showed that 65% of victims blocked offenders from contacting them in hopes of getting away. However, 45% of victims reported that the contact didn't stop after blocking offenders, and 62% complied with demands in an effort to make the threat stop. And 68% of victims reported that threats became more frequent and more threatening after they complied with the attacker. Here we can see an email screenshot claiming that the attacker had intimate photos of their target. Now, this screenshot pulled from the dark web is actually it turned out to be a scam. The attacker did not have intimate photos of their target, but again, what they were trying to do is harvest credentials, right? By having this person sign into this email so they can, begin footprinting their network so they could get access to their computer. And this is really where the digital forensics piece of our project comes into play. If we have this kind of information, if we have IP addresses, right, then we're able to give law enforcement the evidence that they need to make arrests and keep explicit images offline. Additionally, we can identify criminals. We can track down the IP addresses and geographic locations of the people harassing the victims. And we won't judge you. We'll fight, and we'll prevent the exposure of intimate images so for the victims. So don't let the extortionists destroy your life. And there's opportunities um, to stop what's going on and what's happening to the victims. Most victims, however, are embarrassed or ashamed and would prefer to handle the situation on their own. If they do report, they are much more likely to talk to someone they know than to a website or law enforcement. And this is where we are hoping to create a paradigm shift in support. This is the why. If you look, there only 17% of victims reported to law enforcement and 26% reported to a website. And so victims are reporting less, and they're reporting they'd much rather talk to closer family, and that's okay. That's actually the first step, is to talk to someone you trust. However, in resolving the issue, getting support, forensic support, it's important to reach out to hopefully experts. This is a screenshot, and this really drives a point home while we're on the topic of reporting. And again, earlier I mentioned that a lot of services aren't available, or it's rare that they do offer some. They do offer some services that actually help, right? Some evidence-based research and reporting these crimes to law enforcement, right, to the proper authorities. And this is San Francisco's juvenile exploitation, internet exploitation unit. And I was excited, like everybody else on our team. I wanted to call up and understand how this works, right? It's great. Really looking forward to it. And just wanted to ask them some research questions. However, when I called the line, unfortunately, it was disconnected and no longer in service. And this is challenging because if I were a victim and I needed help, and this is the first place I checked for San Francisco area, it could be it could very well be a life or death situation. This brings up a good example of some things I have read and heard about. Is there was a police department, and the victim had reported that they were being cyberstalked, cyberbullied, and harassed, and that they had claimed they had intimate photos of them, and they didn't know how to proceed. They said that they were going to they were threatening them. So they went to the police. However, the police just did not have the tools. They did not have the experts, the digital forensics experts, and they just didn't. They could not respond right away. And because they were not able to respond right away, unfortunately that victim was murdered a few days later. So this is important, that the services, if they are there, if you do offer a light of hope like this webpage, you do have the services available. So what are the warning signs of online sextortion? Well, if something doesn't add up, that should be the first sign, right? If their online profile is not consistent with what you see and what you hear when you talk or chat with them, that should be the first sign there. If it happens too fast, if they're expressing strong emotions for you almost straight away, if they're trying to quickly tempt you to move to another channel of communication, like WhatsApp or Slack or Snapchat, something like that, that's a warning sign. If they make excuses why they're not ever able to be on webcam, or if they can't meet in person, that's another sign. And finally, if they say they need help, and this is where the sextortion scamming comes in. A lot of times these online people, you grow close and you have this long online distance relationship with this person. You've never seen them, but you care about them, and they'll take advantage of that, and they'll say that they need help. Their grandmother is sick, or their car broke down, and that's when things really start to turn for the worse. So, what to do if you feel like a victim of sextortion? Well, addressing your feelings is important, and talking with people who care about you can help, like a close friend, parent, or teacher. And if you don't know where to start, you can start a conversation like, "There's something going on in my life that I need help with. I'm not sure who to talk to, and if I tell you, can you help me figure out what to do?" Do not give them any money. No, the attackers, not the close friend. Don't give the attackers any money or send any more pictures of yourself, right? So don't give in. Giving into demands will actually make things worse. Paying a extortionist or a blackmailer will only result in more demands for payment. Um, Very important note is keep a record of all contact from the blackmailer, particularly any demands or threats, and make a note of everything you know about them. Their this could include like their Facebook name, their URLs of like LinkedIn or Instagram handles. Um, and so what you can do is notify Facebook, YouTube, or whichever app or social media service was used that they originally reached out to you through. Block them and ask your friends to do the same, right? Ask your friends to block them, and consider temporarily deactivating your social media accounts. However, you do not want to delete them, as you may lose some evidence that way. You want to change the passwords for your social media, and review the privacy settings of your accounts. And next, you want to finally, don't panic, right? Reach out, get support from a trusted friend or family member, again, or from an expert counseling and support service if you're feeling anxious or stressed. Sexual harassment and sextortion website proposal for the Capstone project. This is the final slide, and this is where we hope we can transition this project, right? If this is something that becomes more and more, if this comes to fruition, this is something definitely we're strongly considering. This is a suggestion that was actually made by our adjunct professor, Tiffany Rad, where it'd be nice to have a reporting tool, right, on universities, where a victim could report a crime, have a dedicated website to report sexual harassment occurring at the university level. Students and staff and professors would be able to access it. And a clear example of a functioning model is up and running in Mexico. So anyone from the college or anyone from the country who are college students can report these types of actions. And that is wrapping up our project. So I do want to say thank you to those who watch this recording, and we would love to get any feedback. Please reach out to us through Slack. And thank you again to Jorge for providing the how, and Sanjana for providing the what. I am very glad to have been with them on this journey. Thank y'all so much. Have a wonderful day.